From being the most watched non-fictional TV show at its peak, to losing most of its viewership less than a decade later, Top Gear's monumental fall-off is the perfect lesson in the validity of entertainment. And what makes it sting even more for fans is that it didn't disappear overnight. Had the show just stopped airing one day, fans would have been left with nothing but fond memories and nostalgia for what it once was. Instead, Top Gear's demise was a slow and painful process fueled by seemingly honest mistakes.
Didn't use the N-word here, but I've just listened through my headphones and it sounds like I did. Is there another take that we could use?
Bad decisions.
I'd like to say sorry once again to Ocean Timon for the incident and its regrettable aftermath. I want to reiterate that none of this was in any way his fault.
Controversial recasts.
Stop, please stop.
And the thing that put the figurative final nail in the coffin, a tragedy that no one saw coming.
Someone say there's been a real accident here, the car's upside down. So I ran to the window, looked out, and he wasn't moving, so I thought he was dead.
Hi, I'm the Internet Anarchist. I create weekly YouTube documentaries, and today we're diving into the disappointing destruction of Top Gear, the show that seemed like it would go on forever, how it all played out, and if there was anything anyone could have done to save Top Gear from imploding in on itself. That said, there is something you can do to save this channel, and that is to subscribe, so hit that subscribe button and let's get on with the video. Though to fully grasp the tragedy of Top Gear, we have to understand what made it popular in the first place.
You get a go with these things, suddenly you start to feel just how much power they have got to give.
I'll see you in Spain, lad.
Patient to hospital.
Top Gear first came on the scene as a traditional motoring magazine show focused on practical car reviews and road safety. And while its tone and overall presentation was quite different, the overall structure was similar to the more modern iteration, with both studio and outdoor segments to keep the viewers engaged. However, it wasn't long before things started shifting towards the more edgier style fans love today. And it all started with Noel Edmonds' scathing review of the new Fiat Strada minutes into one of the episodes.
I've stared at this for ages, and bearing in mind that Fiat really have come up with some very attractive cars in the past, I just remain staggered that anybody in the late 70s, early 80s can come up with a design like this, because I think it is positively ugly.
This one moment set the tone for what was to come, a tone that only became even more prominent with the addition of a local journalist named Jeremy Clarkson in 1988.
Vauxhall have produced a booklet all about driving responsibly in the countryside. Unfortunately, I never read it.
But even then, the show didn't become what it is known for today until 2003, when a cancellation and a revival later, James May replaced Jason Dorr to join Jeremy Clarkson and Richard Hammond, finally creating the iconic trio that became the face of Top Gear for the next 2 decades. Together, the three propelled Top Gear to heights the BBC XX never thought was possible. Now, there were 2 primary contributing factors to this popularity, the first of which was the overall production value of the show, which became a self-fulfilling prophecy. As the show grew in popularity, the network felt more confident in giving it more budget. This, in turn, increased the insanity of the stunts shown on screen, boosting the show's viewership. Rinse and repeat. However, while the stunts were cool, they wouldn't have been able to keep the show going for very long, which is where the second and arguably the most crucial part of Top Gear shined: the team chemistry. Saying that Jeremy, James, and Richard knew how to banter and play off each other would be a huge understatement.
Well, as it turns out, very, because all you did all day was shout at Jeremy.
And all I wanted to do all day was stick a screwdriver in the side of his head.
The three were a delight to watch, regardless of what they were actually doing. This made the viewers watch every single episode all the way through, even if they didn't have much interest in the exact topics the trio was going to cover. The same went for the international audience, many of whom just tuned in to see Jeremy, James, and Richard do something crazy for an hour. A comment on YouTube summarizes this perfectly. writing, "Top Gear, in its prime, wasn't a car show. It was a show about three mates who happened to like cars. They could have made it about trains, bikes, or anything else. It was Jeremy, James, and Richard who made the show, as they were so good individually, but perfect as a group." All this, combined with the trio's genuine passion and love for cars, allowed Top Gear to become one of the most viewed non-fictional TV shows on the planet. According to some estimates, at its peak, Top Gear was pulling in as many as 350 million viewers globally. The show transcended the small screen and became a part of pop culture as a whole, as evident from the countless memes that spawned from it. This is not to say Top Gear was perfect in every way without any controversies. It was far from it. In fact, it was the rowdy personality of the trio and their constant attempts to one-up each other that often led to backlash from viewers. Like in 2014 when the crew traveled to Argentina to film their new special. However, while they were in the country, people there discovered that one of the car's license numbers read H982FKL. It seemed like just a random number to most international viewers, but many Argentinians saw it as a reference to the 1982 Falklands War that Argentina lost to the UK. The backlash for this was immense and immediate. Some even threw small rocks at the car as they drove by, eventually forcing the trio to jump ship and escape Argentina while leaving their cars behind. The crew and BBC stayed adamant that this number was nothing more than a coincidence, but that did little to quell the anger. For many other shows, a controversy on this scale would have been a death sentence. But for Top Gear, a show that was generating an annual revenue of over £150 million, or about $202 million in today's money, for BBC, a cancellation was out of the question. Unfortunately, it wasn't long before the network came under fire once again, this time for the actions of one of Top Gear's leads, Jeremy Clarkson. In July 2014, UK's Office of Communications investigated Top Gear's Burma special and found the show guilty of breaching broadcasting rules. The main issue they found was with Jeremy's language in one of the scenes, where he saw a man crossing the bridge the production had just built and said that there was, quote, a slope on it.
That is a proud moment. But there's a slope on it.
Which, for those who don't know, is a derogatory term used to refer to a person of East Asian origin. What made this even worse was that this wasn't the first time Jeremy got in trouble for saying something racist. In a prior episode, he had to choose between two different cars, and he decided to make the decision with the classic eeny meeny miny mo rhyme. However, what turned this seemingly ordinary moment into something controversial was that he seemingly recited the original, deeply racist version of this rhyme containing the N-word with the hard R. Jeremy denied using the racist version on purpose and insinuated that this whole thing was nothing more than a misunderstanding.
The full rushes show that I did 3 takes. In 2, I mumbled where the offensive word would normally occur, and in the 3rd, I replaced it altogether with the word teacher. Now, when I viewed this footage several weeks later, I realised that in one of the mumbled versions, if you listen very carefully with the sound turned right up, it did appear that I'd actually used the word I was trying to obscure. I was mortified by this, horrified. It is a word I loathe, and I did everything in my power to make sure that that version did not appear in the programme that was transmitted. In fact, I have here the note I sent at the time to the production office, and it says, I didn't use the N-word here, but I've just listened through my headphones and it sounds like I did. Is there another take that we could use? Please be assured I did everything in my power to not use that word.
Other than the backlash from viewers at the time and him having to apologize, this incident didn't cause any long-term damage to his career or reputation. However, the discovery of the slope comment put the original incident into a new light as well. After all, if he had no trouble being so casually racist towards Asians, what was stopping him from doing the same towards black people? These violations resulted in the BBC BBC giving him a final warning. Any further violations were going to result in severe penalties. His co-host James May, however, decided to defend Jeremy on Twitter, stating, "Jeremy Clarkson is not a racist. He is a monumental bellend and many other things, but not a racist. I wouldn't work with one." Though this did little to soften the blow to Jeremy's and, by extension, Top Gear's reputation. That said, the next big controversy Jeremy got himself into made all of this seem tame in comparison. Something so egregious, it single-handedly kickstarted the destruction of the entire Top Gear show. The incident took place on March 4th, 2015, while Jeremy and the others were staying at a hotel in North Yorkshire. It was a long filming day, and after returning to his room, Jeremy requested a fresh steak meal from one of the show's producers, Oisin Timon. Oisin explained that it was already late and the kitchen was closed, leaving cold food platters as the only option. But instead of making do with whatever was available, Jeremy somehow reached the conclusion that Oisin was the one at fault. And to punish him for this transgression, he socked Oisin in the face, leaving him with a bloody lip. And if physical violence wasn't bad enough, Jeremy made sure to top it off with verbal assault as well, calling Oisin a quote lazy Irish. This behavior would have been completely unacceptable even if Oisin had made a major mistake, let alone for not bringing Jeremy a hot meal when that option wasn't available in the first place. Put simply, Jeremy had no one to blame but himself for the consequences that followed, and to say that he wasn't prepared for said consequences would be an understatement. Not long after receiving Oisin's complaint, the BBC halted all Top Gear production, and following an investigation, the Director General announced that Jeremy's contract would not be renewed, ending his 25-year run on the show.
I've consistently said that I'll make a decision on the facts, and this morning that's what I did. It's been a difficult time for the team and of course for the individuals concerned. What we know is that the producer Oisin Timon was indeed attacked by Jeremy Clarkson, and he was also subjected to sustained verbal abuse, using words that no one should have to endure. Physical violence accompanied by prolonged verbal abuse has crossed the line. And that's why, with regret, I decided this morning that we will not be renewing Jeremy's contract.
Surprisingly, this decision was met with a lot of hostility by the fans who still wanted Jeremy to continue hosting the show even after everything he did. Fans even started a Change.org petition that reached over 1 million signatures in a couple of days, one of the fastest turnarounds in the site's history. Many also started attacking Oisin for being the reason for Jeremy's termination. It reached a point where Jeremy himself had to step in and defend Oisin from these crazed fans.
All I would like to say is I wish people would leave Osh alone, because none of this is his fault.
And while Oisin chose to not press charges, BBC and Jeremy still had to pay up £100,000 in settlement. As for Richard and James, they admitted Jeremy's actions were wrong, but chose to stand by him regardless, and left the show on their own accord. A show that had dominated pop culture since the turn of the century was now left abandoned. BBC, of course, wasn't going to let its cash cow rot in purgatory forever. So just 3 months later, Top Gear was back, with a brand new cast of hosts. Unfortunately, this didn't turn out as well as the BBC execs might have hoped. Following Jeremy's departure, they brought in TV and radio presenter Chris Evans as the new lead. Although Chris had made several appearances on the show as a guest in the past, making him the lead was still a strange move, especially since he wasn't at all that popular with the fans, and also had a reputation of being hard to work with. They also brought in American sitcom star Matt LeBlanc for some odd reason as a co-host for Chris, likely to ensure that at least one of the hosts had an existing fan base. Alongside the two, they had also hired racing experts and car enthusiasts to round up the lineup, failing to realize that what made Top Gear the juggernaut it was the friendship and chemistry of the 3 previous hosts, not the technical automobile content. Even if one of the new hosts had the charisma to entice audiences, the show would have found its way to bounce back. Unfortunately, that never happened, something that became painfully obvious from the horrendous ratings of the new season. season. And as you might imagine, this also tanked the show's viewership into the ground, with views per episode dropping from 5.8 million for Jeremy's last episode to just 1.9 million by episode 6, the lowest it had ever been since Top Gear's relaunch in 2002. And if all that wasn't enough, even the viewers that were still watching were struggling to get behind Chris's try-hard, loudmouth presenting style, especially since it contrasted so heavily against the prior trio's calm and collected wit and humor, with one angry fan on Reddit writing, "F Chris Evans, why did they have to pick this blank as the main presenter? His voiceovers are painful on the ears. I loved how the cinematography is the same, but the voiceover by Chris Evans effing ruins it. I almost had to turn it off. He is so shit." It became clear that Chris wasn't the future of Top Gear, and sure enough, after some behind-the-scenes drama stemming from his controlling personality, he stepped down after just 6 episodes, passing the torch to Matt LeBlanc. Matt did his best with what he was given, but it ultimately wasn't enough. This problem was made worse by the fact that Amazon swooped in and made a $250 million deal with Jeremy, James, and Richard. Together, they produced the Grand Tour, which was both a commercial and critical success. And Jeremy couldn't have been happier.
Because the Grand Tour has been a huge success. On a scale of 1 to 10, how thrilled are you that Top Gear is nowhere near as successful now that you're not on it?
It's a hard face to pull, this one. Let me try.
Top Gear needed to have a radical change just to have a chance at competing with the Grand Tour. So in 2019, BBC shuffled the cast once again and brought in 3 new faces: comedian Paddy McGuinness, former cricketer Freddie Flintoff, and race car driver Chris Harris. The general interest in Top Gear was at an all-time low by this point, so it was effectively BBC's last chance at reviving the show. And surprisingly, this new rebrand worked. While not on par with the iconic trio, the new hosts were charming enough to capture the audience's attention, and for the first time since Jeremy's departure, the show seemed like it was back on track. It even managed to retain an average of over 4 million viewers per episode. However, just as it seemed Top Gear was on its way back to the top, an unforeseen tragedy changed everything. On the 13th of December 2022, Freddie was going to drive a Morgan Freewheeler, a notoriously difficult car to control and maneuver. Freddie set off without wearing a helmet, and while driving at over 45 miles per hour, one of the car's wheels came off, resulting in the vehicle flipping several times and severely injuring Freddie in the process. He miraculously survived the crash, but his face was disfigured permanently, and the trauma from the accident causes him nightmares to this day. Following the crash, Top Gear was put on an indefinite hiatus on the 24th of March 2023, and it's remained that way ever since. Will it ever return to reclaim its throne as the world's #1 car show? Perhaps someday, eventually. After all, it would be unwise for the BBC to discard such a well-established brand in the automotive entertainment industry. But the chances of that happening anytime soon are slim to none, leaving long-term fans with a bittersweet ending to their journey with the show, at least for now.